The 10-person unit included two sisters called Dolores and Marian Price. They were of particular importance to the IRA, but in the early 70s, the campaign by the IRA escalated very significantly. And one of the ways in which it escalated was for the first time, an IRA unit was sent to London to bomb London. That was in 1973. And it's quite often forgotten that this was a deliberate decision and a deliberate escalation of the campaign. There had been no bombs in London until March of 1973. And the IRA unit that conducted those bombings followed a strategy which was never subsequently followed, which was that two cars were hijacked in Belfast. There were four cars, I should say, were hijacked in Belfast. They were driven to Dublin, where they were given false number plates, and they were packed with explosives. They were then driven across on the ferry to Liverpool, and then driven down from Liverpool to London. It's a very long logistical path for the bombs to travel, and this was the only time that they followed this path. They also there were 10 members of the IRA unit involved in this campaign, and they all flew over to London. Either they flew, I should say, or they went by train. And then their plan was to come back that morning. They planted the bombs early in the morning, and they went to Heathrow Airport to fly back. But there had been an informant within the IRA who had tipped off the RUC, who in turn tipped off the Metropolitan Police. The entire unit was arrested at Heathrow Airport. This was a huge setback for the IRA. It also taught them that in future they would not send over units. They would instead embed units in England who would live there and would assemble bombs in England rather than transport them from Ireland. So from their point of view, that made a lot of sense. The 10-person unit included two sisters called Dolores and Marian Price. They were of particular importance to the IRA for several reasons. One of them was that their family had a long-standing association with the IRA that went back decades. In fact, their father had been involved in a previous IRA campaign in England. He'd been interned south of the border, and he'd also been imprisoned north of the border. In addition to that, Dolores and Marian Price were the first women to be allowed to join the IRA. Until then, women were seen in a kind of first aid role or intelligence role or something like that, but these were actual combatants. So they were very important to the IRA. The two sisters were regarded, as one person told me, with a mixture of awe and faith. So Keenan was particularly keen on getting those sisters back to Ireland, where there were different prison regulations. They're allowed to free association with other members of the IRA, etc., and they were eligible for better remission. In order to do that, he decided to kidnap his former boss, Thomas, and hold him for ransom. And that's the circumstances in which he was kidnapped.
I see. Okay, so yeah, obviously, yeah, like I said, the Don Tidy one was the aim was financial. They wanted like a big lump of cash to fund the thing. This was this was a trade. Yeah, interesting.
Trade, yeah.
How did the actual eventually doomed kidnapping take place? Oh, funny, sorry. But before that, you mentioned that Niedermayer's factory was like mainly Catholic. That fact actually saved him, saved his car from getting carjacked off him, because he got stopped by the IRA one night, and they said, he said, oh yeah, by the way, my factory and blah, and just let him go. It was actually it was really not a precursor to his eventual fate. Like,
No, but as you say, it also gave him the confidence to believe that he'd nothing to fear from the IRA because he'd been in their grip, if you want to put it like that. And they had let him go because they knew that the bulk of people that he employed came from Andersonstown, which is a Catholic area of Belfast. In fact, just a couple of months before he was kidnapped, he went as a surprise guest to his brother's birthday in Germany. And as he was leaving, his sister-in-law said to him, "Please be careful in Northern Ireland. Don't do anything that will get you into danger." And he turned to her and laughed and said, "There's absolutely nothing for me to fear. Uh, there's no reason anyone would want to harm me." So what happened was that on the night of the 27th of December, St. Stephen's Day, um, on the day after St. Stephen's Day, they two men called at his house at about 11 o'clock at night. And the only two people in the house were Thomas and his younger daughter, Renata. And they told her that there had been an accident and they had damaged his car. And they invited him to come outside and look at the car and assess the damage. He was actually in bed at the time, but his young daughter, who was about 13, woke him. He put on his trousers, he put on a pair of slippers, he went out to look at the car, and he saw there was no damage to his car. He was going back into the house when he was overpowered by two men, and he was bundled into another car, and it was driven off at speed. The abduction happened to be witnessed by a neighbor who had got up in the night to get a glass of water, and he saw Thomas being abducted, but he wasn't sure of what exactly it amounted to because he thought it was Christmas. Maybe they're taking him to a party and he's reluctant to go, and they're insisting. Or his wife was Thomas's wife, Ingeborg, was in a hospital at the time, and he thought there was a possibility there's an emergency and they need to get him to the hospital fast. So it took almost an hour before he alerted, first of all, the army. And it took another hour before the army alerted the police. By that time, Thomas was already in a so-called safe house, and it was too late to stop the kidnappers.
Right. Usually there's a very kind of there's almost like a set kind of playbook when it comes to kidnappings. You can expect to hear from them with particular demands within a short amount of time. This one didn't quite go like that.
It didn't go that way. There was an initial phone call to the British government that said basically, "We've got Niedermayer and we want the Price sisters returned to Northern Ireland." Um, and that's basically all it said. And there was no follow-up. So, as you say, it's very unusual for kidnappers only to make one phone call because there needs to be some kind of negotiation, even if you know what you have to do, when you have to do it, where you have to leave money or whatever. So, there was uncertainty over what had happened. But the reason that there wasn't a second phone call or a third or a fourth or any other one was because Thomas Niedermayer was killed within 2 days of his abduction. Um, he was actually only being held in a house that was about a mile away. The IRA had turned up at this house on St. Stephen's Day and basically told the people who lived there that they wanted them to move out because they had an operation going on. And the people had very little option but to comply with that demand. They moved out, and that's when Niedermayer was taken. He was brought to a room and he was left on a mattress for a couple of days. On the third day that he was there, he asked if he could go to the loo. When he was being taken to the toilet, he made a dash for it. He was overpowered. He was brought back into the room by four men. They sat on him. He was struggling, and one of them hit him twice with the butt of a heavy revolver. I seen the X-rays of his skull, and there were two severe fractures to his head, to his skull, and he became limp and was recognized to be dead. they contacted Keenan, who was living in another house, and not living, but was staying overnight in a house in Belfast. He came and looked. He was very angry because he knew that he'd lost his bargaining card. And he instructed them to bury her Niedermayer's body in secret, and they were to tell nobody that they had anything to do with it. And so later that night, the body was moved to an area of public parkland. A shallow grave was dug, and her Niedermayer was buried face down. And one of the killers said they did that so that he could only dig himself deeper. His mattress was put over it, and then rubbish was emptied on top of it. Eventually, there were thousands of tons of rubbish on top of the shallow grave, and then they just went completely silent. They, in fact, not just silent, they issued statements saying that they had nothing to do with the abduction. And in what I think is one of the most cynical pieces, the leader of the IRA in Andersonstown said that they had instructed their volunteers to assist in the search for